let me now go to, we're going to Mr. Amaechi Nsofor Amaechi. Now, he has an expertise that is very useful to us. And then we'll continue to look at the conduct of public officers bill. But Amaechi Nsofor is a cross-border asset recovery expert. What does he see? What do we do? There are questions of money laundering being raised. What is it? There are questions of the lifestyle audit that the OSP is doing. What is involved in the lifestyle audit? Mr. Nsofor, let's hear you.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning, everybody. I think one of the first things I have to say that I have observed is a high level of confusion and matters and issues that are being conflated. It almost seems as if there's a lot of distraction taking place. Dead person hands money over to another dead person, and somebody else inherits it, etc. We just need to strip all of that back and keep it very, very simple. The police should investigate the crime that has been reported, or alleged crime that has been reported to them, and the OSP should be allowed to investigate the alleged corruption that is evidence here. Now, Mary has already stated why the OSP is the right office to investigate the alleged corruption, so I'm not going to go back into those points. But what I wanted to say is that strong institutions are the framework and the backbone of good governance. So you were asking earlier, what should the citizens do? What should the people do? The people need to ensure and insist that strong institutions like the OSP's office exist and are carrying out their functions without any barriers being placed in their way. So having said that, on the question of money laundering and lifestyle audits, it is also important for people to educate themselves on these things so they can set the expectations that you expect to see from your public officials. Money laundering is really a process by which dirty money gets washed and gets reinvented into legitimate money, to seem like legitimate money. And there are three phases of money laundering, or three stages. The first one is placement, where the cash is introduced into the banking system. The second stage is layering, where that cash is then converted through a series of transactions to disguise where the original source is. And then the final stage is integration, where that cash is then taken back out as clean money and then reinvested by the criminal. So those three phases are the phases of money laundering. So in this case that we're discussing today, money laundering has not taken place because the full phase or stages of money laundering has not occurred. But it could be the case that money laundering was in the stage of, or in the early stages of taking place. So let's move on to lifestyle audits. What is an audit, first of all? An audit is an examination, an independent examination of financial information to spot any discrepancies, which will then be reported and addressed. A lifestyle audit is a forensic examination of the lifestyle of public officials. And after that forensic examination of that lifestyle of the public official has taken place, the results are then compared to the income stream that those public officials have benefited from. So what lifestyle are they leading? What income do they generate? And if there's a mismatch,
how do you arrive at that, knowing the person's lifestyle to compare with the income that may be sitting in their name, in their bank account or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, the lifestyle part of it, I have to say, is the more difficult part, because income is income. It's how much you earn. You can check tax returns and public documents, etc. The lifestyle part of it, I think, will come from observations as to the assets that the individual owns, the spending patterns of the individual. And luckily in Ghana, there is the availability of multiple whistleblowing sources and mediums, as you just went through earlier. So whistleblowing also form part of that lifestyle audit. So there are various information or data points that would complete that picture as to what that lifestyle is of the public official. And
so that
the benefit. Yeah.
So that typically, how is that whistleblowing to happen? Is that what will lead to the audit, or rather when the audit is ongoing and then the auditor will ask members of the public to give information? Is that it?
In public office, there are two options here, two paths. The first one is that there should be a standard routine lifestyle audit that takes place of all public officials from time to time. Obviously, resources will dictate that it cannot happen too often, but it needs to happen periodically. And then secondly, it also has to happen when there's evidence that people, public officials, are living beyond their means, either by what you can see or what gets reported through whistleblowing.
Interesting. Just hold on quickly for me. Let me go. 2013, I sat on this show and I hosted a similar discussion because somebody, had been taped, recorded secretly, and it went public, a minister. And in the conversation that she was taped, she was hoping that she could make $1 million, So we all interpreted what she said at the time. And then there were these very genuine, comments by members of the opposition at the time. And then one of my favorite, Kweku Bako at the time, saying, this is how to look at the public officer and then be able to tell if they are doing something wrong. So let's listen to Esla Owusu-Ekufo, the communications minister now, then was in opposition, and then Kweku Bako Jr., who also gave us some insight into public officers and their earnings and what they can or cannot claim to own.
You're talking about somebody, $1 million isn't pocket change. Let's not lose sight of the fact. Why would anybody even mention that $1 million? It means she has her sights set on something to cushion not just her personal life, but to secure her political future going forward, because that's the justification that she gave, being able to control others. So it is not something that we can merely wish away or excuse. And I think that, for starters, somebody should be checking her bank balance and to see if she's made some headway towards acquiring that war chest and is well on the way to meeting that.
I think that for starters, and I've said that in another book, we need to start with a lifestyle audit. We need to start with a lifestyle audit of our people in positions of authority. You heard President Mills saying that if SEPS officials are able to build a house in 3 years, then it means they're corrupt. What about government officials, whose only official source of income is their salary, acquiring property in 3-4 years? Isn't that worth investigating?
But the thing that Professor Mills spoke about, and God bless his soul, we know them, we just play ostrich, don't we?
That is why I'm saying that we shouldn't just pay lip service to it and say things that we want people to hear. But we should move beyond that and start with a lifestyle audit of our people in positions of authority.
I don't know the perception out there that there are some people who use politics as a shortcut to growing or creating wealth for themselves. So when you make such statements, the tendency is for people to assume that you are thinking or about to commit some corrupt practice. You can't be in politics, look at your level of incomes, all the things put together, and make $1 million. Not even 10 years, you can't, based on our scale, unless you do something unconventional. So to be honest with you, it's inexcusable.
Right, so Amaechi Nsofor, we had Ursula saying a minister's source of income is their salary. Perhaps you add allowances. And she's right. Our Constitution says in Article 78, Clause 3, that a minister of state shall not hold any other office of profit or emolument, whether private or public, and whether directly or indirectly. There's a caveat. Unless otherwise permitted by the Speaker of Parliament, acting on the recommendation of a committee of Parliament on the ground that holding that office will not prejudice the work of a minister and that no conflict of interest arises or would arise as a result of the minister holding that public office. Our president, Professor Mills, had gone to the port and was blunt about the fact that the officers there could not just get a job and within 4 years they were building mansions unless they were involved in some dubious means. Esla says if you are earning just your salary and things, you can't be doing these things within 4 years. Kweku Bako actually placed it in a certain, category. He said, depending on how much a minister earns and from what he knows, and he has a lot of experience under his belt, 10 years, you can't make $1 million as a minister of state. He says, unless you are using some extra, unlawful means. So my question is, how should the lifestyle audit be done? Should it happen only when somebody has blown the whistle? Or once we know that these are our public officers, we should have a system that does the lifestyle audit regularly?
Yes. There are various checks and balances that need to be in place. It's not a silver bullet by any means of the imagination. A lifestyle audit cannot exist on its own and solve all the problems that we're dealing with here. What needs to happen is you need to have, first of all, an asset declaration regime, as Mary spoke about earlier. That needs to be enforced. Secondly, you need to have an effective whistleblowing regime. That also needs to be enforced. And then, on a periodic basis, public officials need to be subjected to a lifestyle audit. That needs to be enshrined in law. And then the other thing that needs to be enshrined in law is an unexplained wealth order type of confiscation approach. Now, in the United Kingdom, for example, anybody who owns property, I think the figure is in excess of $50,000, and cannot explain, when asked to do so, how they acquired or they could afford to acquire that property, will have that property seized from them following a court process. That process or that kind of law needs to be something that we look at in Ghana, if you're going to prevent people from living beyond their means and going through 4 years of public service and all of a sudden acquiring a lot of wealth. Come to a court of law and explain to the OSP how you managed to acquire, $1 million or $2 million after 4 or 5 years when your income is less than $100,000 over those 4 or 5 years. You should be able to prove it.
In the case of this minister, presently, by the Professor Ntiamwa report, she's supposed to be earning about $30,200 or so as her salary, but there could be some allowances and so on. So I don't know. As we understand, so what would the OSP do? The OSP will give her family pieces of paper to write, to indicate what properties they own and things, how much money they have in which bank and so on, and then try to now run a check to confirm whether you can own that money or not. Is that it?
Yeah. I think the first stage is for the OSP to establish what the wealth is here. And frankly, the wealth could be far more than the $1 million, for example. There might be properties and other aspects of assets, which will obviously all combine to be in excess of $1 million. And then secondly, the OSP needs to also find out what wealth associates, family members, connected parties, etc., to this individual or to a public official have accumulated over a period of time. And then that is going to be compared to the income that those people generated in that period of time. I mean, $30,000 is not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things when you're looking at the size of the wealth.
No, when I said 30,000, I meant Ghana cedis, not dollars.
Oh, Ghana cedis. Okay, 30,000 Ghana cedis, and then to accumulate $1 million from that, it's a massive stretch. But this investigation or this audits by the OSP would need to be forensic in nature. And what do I mean by forensic? I mean, there's technology out there, blockchain technology. There are other technologies that can be used to trace funds and to investigate and make inquiries into the asset position of individuals. So in this day and age, you need to be operating at that level. And why did I mention that? Because quite simply, the office of OSP needs to be properly funded for the OSP to be able to discharge its duties, just due to the nature of crimes that have been investigated and manner in which those crimes need to be investigated. That is critical.
All right, can't thank you enough. Amaechi Nsofor is cross-border asset recovery expert. We thank you so very much for agreeing to speak to us and educate us a bit about these matters. Thank you so very much indeed. So.